Hi guys, I'm Isabella Jane, and today I am doing the Bookish Princesses tag. This was 2-3 weeks ago, so I'm a little late, but it was your top 20 classics you want to read in the 2020s. So I made my list. Let's jump into it. The first 7 books on my list are books that I've actually started but have never finished, and it's getting a little ridiculous and I'd like to tidy them up. So here we go. Number 1, I don't have it with me, Anna Karenina. I read, I think, the first 40% of this book a couple summers ago, 2 or 3 summers ago, and I was into it and I was curious, but it's a little tough pushing through all the Russian politics of that book. So I would like to pick it back up and give it another go. We'll see what happens, but that's a goal for the 2020s. The next book on my list, this is ridiculous. I have read every single Jane Austen book. I have even read Lady Susan, and yet I have not read poor dear Sense and Sensibility. I even have a cute little copy. It's all tiny. So this is kind of crazy. So I really want to finish this. I've gotten through the first third of this book at least 2 times, maybe 3 times, and I just never finished. And I love the movies, so I really just need to read this book. Maybe I'm putting it off because it's the last Jane Austen and I don't want there to be no more new Jane Austen to read. I don't know. I have my list over here that I keep checking. The next on my list is Age of Innocence. This was a book that I was supposed to read for college, which I'll do a video on those books later. I was an English major, but it was crazy. It was over a break and I just didn't get to it. So I think I read the first 20 pages of this book, but I loved it. I just haven't had time, so I want to go back and finish this one. Next one is Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope. I'm sorry, I wasn't saying authors before. I also have a cute little red. This one was actually published 1927. It's so pretty. I love this copy. I found it at a thrift store in England. But I watched the miniseries that came out on Amazon a couple years ago, and I loved the miniseries. And so I started reading the book, and he's hilarious. He's very kind of Jane Austen Dickens meets P.G. Wodehouse. So he's just a really fun author, and it was cracking me up a lot. And so I would really like to finish this one, but he writes a lot. These pages are crazy thin, and there's 630 of them, so it'll be something to plow through. Another book that I was supposed to read for school, and didn't, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I read the first, I read the here. But it's not my thing so far. I haven't really loved it. I love modernism, but I had a hard time with the whole no plot. But it's short, and I think I can do it, and I'd really love to say I read it, and it is pretty writing, so I'm going to push through. We're going to finish it. Next on the list is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. This is another one that I started, long time, 4 years ago. I think right after I finished Jane Eyre, I was completely obsessed and I wanted to see what else she had. And I read the first couple chapters, and they're interesting, but much harder to get into than Jane Eyre was. But I love the Bronte sisters, so I want to just give it a go and see if it's as great as I hope it will be. I've heard good things. I also really love this cover. It's so pretty. The last book on my list of ones to read that I have started is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I started this one just a couple months ago, so I should be able to finish pretty soon. I'm about 10 chapters in, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's sweet, but I think there's going to be a lot of good things to come in this one. So that is one last to finish. So starting off the books that I've never read but I've always wanted to read, it's getting a little crazy. Count of Monte Cristo. I've heard of this one for years. Alexandre Dumas. I really just want to try it. French literature sounds fun, so we're going to give it a go. The next one would be, where'd it go? There it is. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I've read Jane Eyre, as I mentioned, and I've read Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, which is both of those from my favorite books of all time. So I have high hopes for number 3. The next book is this very hefty beauty, Bleak House, Charles Dickens. I like Dickens off and on. Sometimes he's a little much for me, but I'd like to try more, and I hear this one's kind of the beginnings of, not detective novels, but just kind of getting more into the mystery genre. So I think it would be maybe more engaging than some of the other ones because you're going to want to know what happens. So worth a go. The next book on my list is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It's all about books, so I have to read it. My sister loved it. We'll see how it goes. The next three I don't have. One of them, East of Eden, John Steinbeck, one of my best friend's favorite novels. I am not a huge Steinbeck person. I have a hard time with his writing, but after my modernism class, I think I'll appreciate it a bit more, and it just sounds like a really compelling story. Portrait of a Lady, Henry James. I read Daisy Miller 2 years ago for school and really was captivated by it and would love to read more of his work. So this one sounds sad but intriguing. And the last one, Evelina by Frances Burney, is one of the contemporaries of Jane Austen, and so I feel like that's a must. Next on my list, Much Ado About Nothing, William Shakespeare. I saw this as a play, and it is probably my favorite comedy, so I would love to just sit and read it and be able to kind of get more at the meat of the words. Next is Hefty, Beautiful, Vanity Fair, William Makepeace Thackeray. I think I'm saying that right. I don't really know anything about this book, but it is a classic, and somehow it's just always intrigued me without knowing much, so we'll give it a go. Next is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I've read Importance of Being Earnest and seen it, and I've seen most of Ideal Husband as well, so he's just great. Picture of Dorian Gray is darker, but it was my English teacher's favorite book, so I've got to give it a go. And how are we doing? Oh, yes. Okay, the next one is Where Angels Fear to Tread by E.M. Forster. I've read Howard's End and Room with a View and adored both of them, so I want to give... This one's a lot less known, but I read the first page in a bookstore once and was immediately hooked, so I really want to see how the rest of it turns out. This is probably ambitious to do by myself without a book club or something, but Light in August by William Faulkner. I absolutely adored The Sound and the Fury. It just got at the heart of humanity in an incredible way, so I have high hopes for some of his other works. And the very last one, book 20, The Song of the Lark by Willa Cather. I also read My Antonia for an English class, and it was so beautiful. It was almost like a grown-up version of Laura Ingalls Wilder. It was more heartbreaking, but it had that beauty of the prairie, so I would love to just try some more of her works. So those are my 20 books for the 2020s. I have 10 years. We'll see if I succeed in any of them, but they have all been on my list for so long it's getting kind of crazy. So thank you, Bookish Princess. I'll tag her video below, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye!